Buongiorno everyone. Welcome back. Benvenuti to our fourth and last appointment with the Rome Book Club Lenten Music Through the Ages. For those of you joining us today for the first time, it is a pleasure to have you with us. My name is Silvia Dall'Olio and I serve as the Executive Director here at the Rome Global Gateway. And I'm in good company again today with Dr. J.J. Wright, Director of the Notre Dame Folk Choir, with whom we've had the pleasure of hosting this entire series. We would like to take a moment at this time to thank all the co-sponsors of our Lenten Music Through the Ages series, Notre Dame Folk Choir, Sacred Music in Notre Dame, the Center for Italian Studies, and the Notre Dame Alumni Association. As we said, we are nearing the end of our musical journey after learning about Gregorian chant, Renaissance polyphony, and last week about Baroque music, the music that developed between the late 16th and the early 17th centuries. Today, we are back to our contemporary times and have a bit of a different program in that we're focusing on Christ's Passion in sacred music and on a recent collaborative project that the folk choir is developing and is centered on precisely on the Passion. The project is presented by Librettist Tristan Cooley, and we are very excited to have Tristan and some of the choir's members with us today. Thank you, all you guys, for being here. Before I leave the floor to JJ, Tristan, and the Passion Project, a quick reminder that if you have questions for our speakers, and you can send them in through the Google form that we're sharing with you now. And finally, that as in previous appointments, we will have a 15-minute breakout session at the end of the conversation so that we can continue meeting each other and discussing today's topic in small groups. We will hold these breakouts, as I said, at the end of the formal portion of the program. We will not reconvene after the breakout room, so should you now wish to break out, you may choose to leave the meeting at that time. And now, JJ, turning it over to you and your special guests. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Good to see everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon. I'm so thrilled to be finishing up our course today. Just a couple words of thanks here before we get started to Sylvia and to Costanza and to the Rome Global Gateway for sponsoring this event and this whole series. As I've mentioned, I studied in Rome during my doctorate, and Sylvia and Costanza were the most hospitable hosts you could ask for. And so I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with you guys again and to be able to put the series on, and of course, to be able to welcome our students into this as well. So thank you. And then also to Mary Scott, who's been an amazing guide through the whole process with ThinkND. I can't see Mary, but I know she's here. Thank you, Mary. So today we get to welcome some guests and members of the Notre Dame Folk Choir, as well as my colleague and friend and close collaborator, Tristan Cooley, who is a poet and a wonderful musician as well. Tristan and I met each other at the New School for Jazz in New York City back in 2009, I think. And we've been working together ever since. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to be able to welcome you here today, Tristan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a nice privilege to be here today.
So let's jump right in. So the last couple of weeks here, we've been focused on sacred music kind of through the ages, right? So we started with Gregorian chant. We made our way through Renaissance polyphony. We talked about Baroque music, oratorios last week. And today we jump into the present, but let's get to know you guys a little bit first. Tristan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in this project?
Sure. Like I said, like JJ said, I've been sort of affiliated with Notre Dame for a couple of years, sort of since he started, but the folk choir has extended several invitations to me since 2017 to compose texts for them to sing. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've gotten to sort of progressively get more involved with working with the students to write and compose actually the poetry that they'll sing together as a unit, not just myself writing a thing for them to sing, but all of us working together to revise and complete that poetry. And yeah, I live in Vermont, and I've been doing that work here over Zoom, which has been pretty good.
Cool, thanks. So Michael Marino, what got you involved in the folk choir?
Cool. Hi, JJ. Good question.
Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm a junior at Notre Dame and got into the choir my freshman year, my second semester freshman year, and I was looking for a community basically on campus outside my dorm, especially, and I liked liturgical music. I was helping out with music in mass in my dorm a lot, and so the choir, it was attractive to me, and our style of music too, not just liturgical but music for the folk was attractive, and I just wanted to make a bunch of friends who loved music like I did, and so yeah, I just kind of joined in the middle of the year and found a real home in the choir.
Yeah, and Michael, you joined first, and then you took a semester off, and then you came back, and now you're here writing poetry for the choir. How did that all work out?
Yeah. So I took a little hiatus because I needed to. It was my sophomore year, and I was trying to figure out my major and realized I didn't want to be an engineer anymore, and so I needed some time to figure it out. And as fun as folk choir is, I really wanted to focus in and not be distracted. So I was going to lectures and talking to people and doing that discernment. But it was a natural, reaction at the end of that semester to jump back in. I missed my friends, and I missed singing at Sunday Mass and just seeing everybody at rehearsal twice a week. And then pandemic happened, and we kind of dove into this project over the summer, which is a real gift. And I don't know. I didn't realize it'd be still working on it, and still have such a active part, like every week working on it. So it's been a progression of getting more and more involved, and getting to know.
It's wonderful to have you in the choir, Michael. People say students aren't pragmatic, but you sound pretty pragmatic to me. When will you tell us about how you found your way into the choir?
Yeah. So hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Wynn. I'm also a junior here at Notre Dame. And so my first encounter with the folk choir is a little different. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and the summer after my senior year of high school, the folk choir went on Texas tour, and their first stop was at my parish, St. Monica Catholic Church. And so I remember hearing about the announcement, and I was like, well, I've done choir all of my life, and I knew I wanted to take part in a choir at Notre Dame, which is where I had decided to go. And so I was like, I'll check them out. Let's see what this is all about. And so I remember it was a Wednesday afternoon. It was right after school. And the first thing I noticed was just how joyful everyone was. The church was just buzzing. And that energy was very infectious. And I remember one of the first songs that folk choir performed was I'm the Bread of Life, which is a very well-known hymn, but they totally put a twist to it, and it was so fun. And I just couldn't help bouncing my head. And I just knew I wanted to be a part of this group when I came to Notre Dame. And so I auditioned welcome weekend, which was a little stressful, not gonna lie, but thankfully JJ liked me enough to let me in. And I remember I was very nervous for my first rehearsal, but the second I stepped in there, I was enveloped in a big hug by a stranger, and I was like, this is the place for me. Like I was immediately welcomed, and I'm proud to say that this community is one of the most important to me on campus.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you, Wen. Thanks for sharing that. So I remember actually that Wednesday and that concert at St. Monica's. I remember it very well because we had just gotten to Texas, but it's fun to revisit that memory. So guys, we've been talking about Lenten music over the past couple weeks, and we've been using Lenten music to illustrate the similarities and difference in sacred music styles. Lent is an especially meaningful time in the church, of course, but can you share a little bit about how these 40 days are different for you from other times of the year? And maybe we could start with Hannah.
Yeah, so hi guys, I'm Hannah. Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here. So Lent is a time of preparation and really getting yourself ready for the Easter season. So it's really important that you feel grounded in your faith and you feel like you're actively doing things to sort of get there and get ready for Easter. But for me, sometimes accessing my faith is really difficult, especially as I've gotten older. You get older and faith gets harder. And that's definitely been the case for me. But music for me has always been a really powerful way to sort of access my spirituality. And music really gives me a spiritual feeling that I really just can't get anywhere else. And so with the folk choir, especially during Lent, spiritual music, sacred music has been so important for me to really feel like I am preparing for Easter and that I'm sort of living my faith in the Lenten season. Just music really gives me a way to do that. Whereas I don't know how I do it without music in the folk choir, really.
How about you, Maria?
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Maria and I'm a freshman at St. Mary's College, so right across the street. So for me, Lenten music definitely obviously feels different just because, like Hannah said, Lent is a time of preparation. As a kid, like I really was not a big fan of Lent at all. I didn't like the whole like you have to give something up and you have to kind of suffer through this period. But what I found as I've like grown older is that like Lent is such a special time, like obviously liturgically and musically, because the music centered around the Passion and just Lent in general is just so evocative to me. Like I remember going to all the masses in the Basilica and just being so like entranced by the music because of how evocative it was to both Christ's Passion and to like our own sin.
Cool, thanks, Maria. And one of the wonderful things about Maria is that a couple weeks ago we were joined by Dr. Dories and Dr. Fassler, and Maria was in the children's choir for many years since it started, I think, right? And I had the privilege of working together with Maria on an album that we made in 2016 called O Emmanuel for Advent. And then last year, I was the interim director of the chamber choir, and Maria, we got to work together again in that. And now she's in the folk choir. So it's really cool just to kind of see the way the progression has worked over the years. So, but thank you guys for sharing that about Lent. I think this is a good segue into our conversation about this passion project that we keep alluding to. So Tristan, can you take a first go at this and maybe tell us a little bit about what we're talking about when we say passion project?
Okay, the passion project is a process, for one. That's the sort of best word I can conjure to describe what it is. It's been in the process of creation for a couple of years, and this just means it's been getting written and rewritten and revised and sampled and sort of experimented with and listened to, and more and more people have been joining in the process of creating this thing. And our passion project is a passion, a traditional passion in one sense, in that we're acting out singing, with our using our art and our voices to proclaim the suffering and death of Christ in this very mysterious, this deepest mystery of our faith. And it's sort of taken a few different I don't know, iterations. It's gone through a couple of cycles. Its life cycle is now, I think, in maybe the most interesting place, because it's like I said, like we're writing a script right now. I've been writing a libretto. If I'm sort of titled as the librettist, what I feel like I really am is compiling all this material that Maria and Michael and Hannah and Wen and like 5 other students alongside of me have been writing, along with JJ's music, along with the compositions and arrangements of 2 other very accomplished professionals, Frank Rousseau and Ike Sturm. All this material that we have is like right now in the process. I keep using this word process, but I really think it's like the best word to describe this thing. It's in the process of distilling into a, I don't know, maybe a 90-minute to I don't know, JJ, what do you think? Like 80 to 90-minute performed piece of music that is sung, spoken, and somewhat acted and staged. That's probably the best way I can think of to describe it, just because to me it's been such a exponential process.
Yeah. I think the thing I can add to that is the like Tristan said, the project started about 3 years ago, and its initial inspiration actually came from the children's choir. The director, Mark Dories, asked me to write a passion, which ultimately evolved into a collaboration between the folk choir and the children's choir. But as a sacred music composer, a passion is one of the most intimidating things to tackle, because very, very difficult to look at the passion, for me at least. I've found, as I've explored more, that this is not a unique experience. Most of us don't really want to look at the suffering and death of another person. And as a sort of cornerstone of the Christian faith, it makes it all the more confusing. This person who has suffered and died is also God somehow, right? Big problem there, for me at least. And so I struggled with this immensely, and still struggle with it immensely, which is why I think Tristan keeps referring to it as a process. It's not one of those things for me where I get to look at it and understand, but more so a paradigm that I start to see the world through. And one of the access points, I think, this is probably this is really a crucial element of it, is that when I'm creating sacred music, I have to have a connection in the world to the sort of theological mystery that exists. So one example is I wrote a piece for the Immaculate Conception, which is Mary's conception, okay, Jesus's mother. And then we had this beautiful Vespers for this feast on December 8th. And I wrote this whole kind of through composed piece for it. And as I'm getting into the thing, you know, my wife, Alexandra, had 2 miscarriages while I'm writing this piece. And all of a sudden, this sort of theological mystery of birth and conception and trying to understand our place as being created by God is very immediate. And for me, that completely opened up what I was able to say with this piece, the Vespers for the Immaculate Conception, because, you know, my wife and I are going through this thing as a family now, and we're trying to understand what it means for us to lose a child, and for us to cherish and value the children that we do have and did have. And so when this sort of methodology got passed along to the Passion, I was in a similar situation. Like I don't even know how to begin here. Last year also, Notre Dame had announced, or 2 years ago, Notre Dame had announced that the topic of the Notre Dame Forum would be the clergy sex abuse crisis, which of course is one of the most devastating things in the church, I think, in the modern church. And for me, all of a sudden it kind of became clear. It's like there is such great betrayal and deception and lies and just awful reality there around the clergy sex abuse crisis. And yet somehow I found that it intersected with the Passion, and that all of this evil, all of this difficulty, all of this betrayal, these are the exact things that Jesus came to die for. And in fact, these are all the things that are wrapped up into the story of the Passion. Okay, so the Passion does what it says that it does. It shows us suffering, and it shows us death, and it shows us sin and loss and betrayal. And it invites us into those things in their proper context, in that Jesus says, these things are real, and I, as God, let me join you. Let me come down there with you and walk through them together with you. This was the original sort of conception of the idea of this Passion, and finding kind of that way in through the clergy sex abuse crisis, anchored it in the world, in that, like, this isn't just some kind of abstraction that we're trying to conform ourselves to, but we want to bring justice into the world. We want to bring peace through our Christian faith, and understanding this mystery more deeply, and understanding the way that it can transform our own hearts will allow us to contribute this to the world in a unique way, I think. So that really is what got us started, but that led us into this whole journey with the students, and that we wanted to figure out, like, is it possible to invite students really into writing words, into writing music? And I wanted to ask Wen a little bit just about Wen had a very difficult assignment in this project, in that she was responsible for writing a song that was about John and Mary at the foot of the cross, kind of at the height of the drama of the Passion. Jesus is on the cross, crucified, and John and Mary are there staring up at Jesus and offering this reflection. And so I wondered, Wen, if you could talk a little bit about that process and kind of, what it was like, and whatever else you'd like to say about it.
Yeah, so I became involved with the Passion Project last semester. And so right at the end of that semester, we hosted small groups within the choir. And so I decided to host a small group about John, the beloved disciple, and Mary, the mother of God, in the context of the foot of the cross. And the reason why I chose these two figures was because I'd always been a little bit perplexed by them, just because they are so greatly venerated. These are two of the greatest saints in Catholicism, but because of that, I often felt like a disconnect to them, because I was like, you're just perfect, and how are you feeling in this moment? Because I feel like in that moment, that's where that perfection kind of breaks a little bit. And so that small group was very conducive, because I found that others in the choir felt the same way as I did, but they also felt connected to these two figures. And so ultimately, I wanted to show how Mary, the Mother of God, and John, the beloved disciple, are two people who we can really relate to in our lives. Two people who really could only stand there as someone they loved took on immense suffering. And what does that look like in the lives of college students? What does that look like in the lives of the average Catholic? And so I was responsible for crafting the lyrics to this song over the winter break. And it was definitely a very challenging thing to try to get inside their heads and to capture their voices in a meaningful way. But with the help of Tristan and JJ and Frank Russo, I came up with something that I'm really proud of, and something that I think a lot of people can relate to in the context of a modern day pop duet, which I think a lot of people can resonate with. So yeah.
A beautiful one. I actually we have a little demo of this song that I wanted to play. I can just play a little portion of it so you can get a sense. So that's a good example because it actually leads into a little bit about the way the process has worked so far. So as you can hear, that is not the choir singing on a demo, right? That's not a live recorded thing. We're in the middle of coronavirus, so we've had to adapt and try to find ways to still construct this music without getting the feedback of actually performing it. And so one of the ways we've done this is by recording students' voices one at a time in a recording booth, stacking them all together. And in fact, the folk choir constructed an entire album of this for our 40th anniversary, which is this year. And that was really the buildup of skills that we needed to create this passion music. So what we just heard there is a demo, right? We created it in a software program, and you hear Frank, our collaborator, singing in his falsetto to try to create some mock-up of what the song ought to sound like. But I have another little example here that I wanted to show just to get into the process a little bit. We have a song, of course, about Veronica. So if you don't know, Veronica, traditionally speaking, is the person who meets Jesus as he's carrying the cross of Golgotha. And she has a cloth, and all she can do is wipe Jesus's face with it. And so another team of students who aren't here today, Anna Stodd and Katie Vizana, took the lead in a similar way to what Wynn just described, and wrote these lyrics for a song about Veronica, and also helped construct the music. So I wanted to show a little bit of what that actually looks like in practice. What they did was create the words, and then we all met in a room here on campus, and we worked through the melody piece by piece. Okay, so they would sing something, another person would respond, and it was a very collaborative process. At the end of that session, we came up with something that sounded like this. One more time. So this is Anna and Katie singing.
Yet it seemed so far away. I will not lie and say I understand this path you are sure to take. 'Cause if you loved me, why can't you stay?
So the thing I love about that little example is what Anna and Katie were trying to capture in this song is this sort of longing in Veronica's heart that there's really nothing she could do to prevent this. The guy is going up the hill to die, but the one thing she can do is try to find him and serve him in this little way. And this has become one of the sort of foundations of how we have, as a community, come to understand the Passion. I might not be able to be the person who can hang on the cross. I might not be able to do anything to solve in its entirety the clergy sex abuse crisis, but I can do something. I can contribute one thing. And in fact, I want to. And being able to contribute in that way is one of the things that can strengthen my faith in its most integrated way. And so I love this example for that reason. after they sang the melody, I said, okay, what does this song feel like? You know, like what's the accompaniment sound like? Or how do we get to the feeling of what Veronica's going through? And they're like, oh, well, maybe there's some kind of piano thing that kind of moves fast and it feels like she's running through the streets, trying to find Jesus as he's walking up. And so we mocked up this little piano part in the same session that I'll play now. So it's got this kind of like light on its feet quality. We're searching, and those two materials I then took home and tried to make them play nice together in one song, and this is what we developed out of that. So this is the most current version of our Veronica song, which you'll have to bear with my terrible singing, but. So I like that example because it shows kind of like in a really quick nutshell, this process that plays out over 30, 60, 100 iterations for each of these songs. And this is why we keep referring to it as a process. We are doing our best to welcome our own and to welcome the student contributions on their own meditations of the Passion. And we want to find a home for all this stuff. This is the choir's expression of what it means to live the Passion. And so I kind of going off that, maybe I could open it back up here a little bit. Michael, can you tell us a little bit, what's been the hardest part of this process for you?
The hardest part of the process, I think, there have been a couple hard parts. I think I've learned a lot about just this kind of like, but yeah, I guess the big challenge has been like staying in love with it every time I work on it, you know, like finding something I love about. So like first semester this past fall, we worked on a lot of different songs together, and we kind of jumped around a lot, and that was exciting. But then after that in like November, I picked a song and worked on it, and now we're working on the libretto, which is kind of the in-between sections of the different songs in the Passion project. And I don't know, like, yeah, it's just looking at a text, like a gospel passage, and imagining it and deciding what I love about it, and then figuring out how to express it is hard. And yeah, I guess the expression part is the hardest part. Like I could say, oh yeah, that's a really cool scene. But it's also nuanced, and there are parts that other people love too. And so yeah, that's the collaborative part of that process that also makes it hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Answer. Yeah.
How about you, Maria?
I think the hardest part, like, or the biggest challenge so far, has just honestly been like kind of the writing in general. In some ways, like when we were all working together and kind of like bouncing around, it was easier to kind of like, I guess, like feed off each other's energy. And then when we transitioned to our own songs, I feel like I definitely had like writer's block for a bit. And almost like kind of how JJ alluded to earlier, like you kind of need like an emotional connection to the piece you're working on in order to make it like genuine and pure, and not just something that you create without any like connection to it. So once I kind of was able to like get past like not making sure like everything I wrote was perfect, and like just trying to just write from the heart and stuff like that. That's what made it a lot easier to create a song and just kind of like keep the process going without getting too stuck in like the fine details.
Can I hop
Yeah,
in here first?
the
Can I just say something about
I can
that?
add to that. The elephant in the room is sorry, Tris, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I wanted to add something to their
go for it.
comments. Were both illuminating something to my, you know, with both of your experiences of writing. Maria's been working on a section in the libretto that's sort of long, the carrying of the cross. There's a lot of things happen. Michael has been writing two things: Peter's trial and denial scene, and the scene with Pilate and Jesus, which are both very complex scenes and involve lots of different sort of cinematic cuts. If you read the 4 different gospels, there's 4 different versions, you know. But with both of these students, and I think to both of their points, this is what's hard about writing. It's like, how do I know what's an acceptable offering here? How do I know when I've come to the table and brought, how do I know that the thing I brought to the table is any good? And it's strange because that's a kind of a thing that you can, and I found this too, and I struggle with this too. This is why I wanted to jump in here, because it's not until I started working with you all in a more sort of concerted, consistent way that I feel like my own writing got any better. Like I've had to learn how to give away. I've had to learn how to say, what do you think of this? Like, and then to sort of acknowledge and accept that the thing that I'm writing and the thing that I'm creating is really not a me. It's always a we experience. It's always these texts are always like porous, you know, and that's what makes them so beautiful, is that when I can say, Maria, what do you think of this passage? Like, what do you think of can I use this psalm here? And you can say, yeah, it's okay. But Tristan, I think, have you thought about this? And almost always, like if we sit with it long enough, it seems as though through conversation, we develop this tool of conversation that brings us to somewhere new. And yeah, anyway, so that's been like the greatest gift, but it's also the hardest part, I think, the hardest part of writing, I think, to sort of incorporate into yourself, is how do I get other people constantly involved in it?
Yeah,
So yeah,
great
sorry,
point.
that was my aside.
No, all good. Because I think the wonderful thing about that, you know, the word passio, the root of passion, is like an emptying out. Christ empties himself out for us. And I love the metaphor here of, I write things to give them away. That is our own artistic way of entering into the paradigm of the passion. Hannah, what's been great about this?
Yeah, so I am an English major, and so I do a lot of writing and I do a lot of reading. And so it's been so cool to look at scripture and look at the passion through a lens of like literary analysis, and to sort of find artistic routes to interpret it and to use that in your own faith life, and then to put that onto a page. So it's like worlds colliding for me, like the poetry I write and the music I make with the folk choir and also my faith have just all been wrapped up into one while doing it with all of my best friends. So it's been really fulfilling for me and really meaningful. And yeah, I'm just like really looking forward to see where it continues to go, because all of these paths in my life meeting has just been so wonderful.
Yeah, I think you just said that, and Wen sort of mentioned it before too, but you guys have all alluded to it. The challenge here is we are presented with this opportunity to encounter the passion, right? Wen talked about John and Mary, and we see them, and it's like, how do I find a way to relate to them, or I don't get it. And the response is not to look the other way. The response is to try to find, how can I get that? And entering into the mystery and being able to do it in community, I think, has been one of the most life-giving portions of this process so far. Because, you know, of course, when we deal with matters of mystery and faith, like, there are elements that we can't possibly comprehend. But that's I don't think our response should be to shut her away. I think it should be to try to enter in more deeply and find the ways that we can connect to these things in our own lives. And that's when they're really able to become incarnated. They get to become real in the world when we respond in that way. So, so we have a premiere of sorts for today that I'll play here in a moment before we wrap up, but we have a real version of one of the songs that we just recorded this past weekend for the foot washing, and you guys will be the first people to get to hear it, which is very exciting. But before we get into that, I just kind of wanted to throw out like a question maybe for anyone who feels like taking it. As you imagine what your life will look like post-graduation, some of you are only sophomores or first-year students, but can you see this experience fitting in any way? Or how do you see it fitting in?
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. I really want to work in publishing when I get out of college. And so I feel like this dynamic of like collaboration with others to form a piece of art to put out into the world is just super relevant to what I want to do and like my future career. So I think that's a really cool aspect of it, is that I feel like I'm not only just doing this thing with some of my best friends and it's really a good time and really meaningful for my personal life, but it also feels really applicable to just like my career down the road.
Anyone else want to jump in there?
I think for me, oh, sorry. I think for me, yeah, like for post-graduation, like although I am still a freshman, I'm a nursing major, so potentially going into the medical field one day, just through my song with the whole carrying of the cross and especially like the falls and stumbles of Christ, like through Calvary, has just been very like insightful into just like suffering in general for me, and just like how, you know, the whole phrase like people have their own crosses to carry, just through kind of delving into that portion of the passion and writing in response to it has just been very like insightful into how people struggle with their own things in their lives and how we're all like on our own sort of passion, and how as a nurse, like I would be encountering people's like, you know, kind of daily suffering, and how like ultimately everybody can unite their own suffering to Jesus's.
How about you, Michael? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Maria. I think my career probably won't be anything very artistic. Something, I don't know. I study like science and economics, and but honestly, in this process I've learned a lot about just working on a long-term project, having an idea of the mission of the project, and revisiting that throughout. And I've realized that that's been really important, because this has been just a process, and we're offering up this process. I feel like any project can be like that. And then also I've just learned to ask hard questions with people. You know, if I have a hard question about something I'm working on, or a story, something that happens in my life that I don't understand entirely, I tend to keep it in and think about it by myself. But this project has been a lot of asking tough questions and kind of sitting in the room and looking at each other and thinking, whoa, we can encounter this together, and learning to do that. So that's been a big takeaway for me.
That's awesome.
I feel like this is kind of a more big picture takeaway, but my faith is something that's really important to me, but it's also something that I have a very tumultuous relationship with. And especially this past year, it's been hard for all of us. And there have been times where I've really doubted my faith. But I think rooting myself in this project, connecting with Christ in his suffering on such a deep level, and a level of engagement that I have often shied away from, I think that has really helped me to see how, though the suffering of Christ is is important. It's what comes out of that suffering, which is love and salvation for the world. And so I think a lot of times I get bogged down by this idea of suffering, but it's what's come out of it for me, which has been my contributions to this project, getting to know the members of this project better and more deeply. That's what has been so meaningful in my life, and why I'm just so proud to be a part of this project. And I know that I'm going to be able to carry not only this project, but this renewed relationship with God and with Christ into my future life.
Beautiful, Anne. Yeah, I think to kind of summarize a little bit, part of what the Passion allows us to do is to talk about suffering in a safe and context appropriate way. It's intergenerational, right? Me and Tristan can sit with students, we can ask our mentors, and we can talk about these difficult things that we go through. And when we're able to frame them in the language of the Passion, we're able to talk about them in a way that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. I got a question here. Someone said, impressed by Wen's very thoughtful ideas about John and Mary at the foot of the cross. Any chance parts of her work can be posted? So I think you might need to write a meditation there, Wen.
I would love to. I thank you to whoever sent that question, and I'm glad that you found my meditation insightful. But yes, please reach out to me, and I'll would love to talk more about it.
Yeah, eventually, all these things will be recorded as part of a piece. We're hoping to premiere the whole work on Good Friday of 2022 in the Basilica, and then as a choir community to travel to take a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and to record this music in the Holy Land at the Notre Ecumenical Institute, which is Notre Dame's RGG of Jerusalem, Roman Global Gateway of Jerusalem. So that's kind of where we're headed here on the long term. The next question we got was about, very good question actually, for Tristan, I think. The emphasis seems to be on the Passion of Christ, which of course is the focus of Holy Week. But the one who died for us also rose from the dead. Are you including the resurrection in your Passion?
Excellent question. I would hope to. The resurrection is a topic that is, to me, is it's so large, it encompasses, it's so abundant, and so saturates like my own ability. It's been hard enough to figure out what I think about the Passion. But yes, I fully intend to frame this Passion work in the context of the resurrection, which is how I frame the rest of my sort of Christian life. How can I understand the Passion only because of the resurrection? So yes, to sort of very clear, direct answer. The answer is yes. I would love to encounter the resurrection in text and within the context, in this sort of collaborative field that we've created. I don't know exactly what it'll look like, because there are fewer examples for me or models, I think, reliable models to sort of base something on. At least with this, I can sort of look at like St. Matthew Passion, St. John Passion, Bach's works. I can look at Jesus Christ Superstar. I can even look at Mel Gibson's movie and go, what's going on here? I don't have the same frame of reference for the resurrection. So maybe we'll just have to make our own frame of reference.
It's the spirit. So I think we're about ready to wrap here. So I think I can play our newest song, which is for the foot washing. Someone asked the question, I've thoroughly enjoyed this series and I'm tremendously impressed with these students. When will the project be completed? And will there be an opportunity to listen to a performance? And the project will never be completed. Of course, the Passion is the process. Eventually there will be an album that results from this work, and we'll be able to perform it, of course, on Good Friday. But that's down the road. We need to make sure that we finish our music and learn it and then present it and record it. And but we will get there. Eventually there will be a way to access all this material. So I will move into setting this up. And I want to just give a little bit of credit to Mary Scott again. She wrote a beautiful meditation that we'll leave you with before we play the song. And if someone has the lyrics to the foot washing song handy and you could put them in the chat, that would be great. But I'll read Mary's reflection and then I'll dive right into the example. So this song is about the foot washing, where Jesus washed the feet of his disciples in an act of complete servant leadership. As you listen to this song, just recorded by the choir, we ask for you to think about all the ways that God has demonstrated his love for you and your family, how he accompanies and leads you on your own journey of life. Reflect on how God speaks to you or shares with you divine or God moments where you feel his presence and his love and his sacrifice so that we may each have a chance at eternal life with him in heaven. So without further ado, all right. So just a final word of thanks to all our participants. It's been wonderful to be with you these 4 weeks. I'm thrilled. Tristan and I will join you in the small groups today, which Sylvia will introduce in a moment. But I just want to take a minute to thank Maria and Wen and Hannah and Michael beautiful reflections today, and thank you for sharing. And of course, for all the work that you do and continue to do on this project. Major thanks to my good friend and co-collaborator, Tristan Cooley. None of this would be possible without him. Tristan's imagination and passion and resilience are one of the best gifts that I've received in my life. So I'm so grateful to Tristan for his friendship and the way that he cares for the students and contributes his gifts the way he does. Finally, again, thank you, Sylvia Costanza, the Rome Global Gateway, for sponsoring this series and giving us the opportunity to talk about and share our love of sacred music. And to thank ND, to Mary Scott for helping to make all this possible as well.
I'm afraid we run the risk of spending the next 20 minutes thanking each other, because it really is a gift that keeps on giving. And JJ, from your time in Rome, which we all remember fondly to today. It was moving. Thank you guys really for sharing, and we're honored to be also the very first ones to listen to this music, and your passion transpires from every word that you use, and certainly from your composition and the music. So sincerely, thank you. We'll go now into the breakout rooms, and JJ and Tristan will join us, and everybody else who feels moved to do so, please join as we divide into the breakout rooms. And as usual, the breakout rooms will last 15 minutes, and we expect everybody, as always, will follow the rules of civil discourse and respect each other's comments. If you choose not to participate in the breakout rooms, we're saying our goodbyes now. Thank you again, everyone, for participating, and we hope to have many of you with us in our next Rome Book Club series, which will focus on frescoes with Professor David Mayernick, faculty member in the School of Architecture, who's based here in Rome.